Good afternoon, everybody. So thank you for joining us for the 2024 Alfred F. Mannella and Rose T. Lauria-Mannella Endowed Distinguished Speaker Series. I'm Millicent Gaskell. I'm the University Librarian and Director of Falvey Library, and it's my privilege to welcome you all here today. We are honored to co-sponsor this event with the Italian Studies Program and with Dr. The speaker series is focused on scholarship about Italian American history, culture, and the immigration experience, and is made possible by the generosity of Villanova alumnus Alfred S. Mannella. This endowed lecture series is named for his parents and is free and open to the public. Today's lecture is entitled Pursuing Your Italian Roots, and will be presented by genealogist James Trovarello. Okay. James Trovarello has been conducting Italian and Sicilian genealogy searches for the past 35 years. He's the owner and operator of the Italian Family Research, located in Philadelphia. His major focus is on Italian civil and church records. He has taught researching techniques to the family history centers and presented in Italian genealogy topics at various Italian culture clubs, organizations, and universities. He is now retired from a career in law enforcement and as a private investigator. Please, also, if you have a cell phone, would you please silence those now? And please join me in welcoming James.
Thank you, friends and family, for being here today. And also thank you to the Mannella family, who obviously, without them, it wouldn't be possible to be here today. So thank you, Mannella family. Genealogy, pursuing your roots. Kind of like everybody knows what that is, right? Maybe recognize all the TV shows over the last 10 years, the ancestry ads about connecting your roots and your family, finding your family. Actually, genealogy is a little more complicated than that. It is basically the study of ancestral lines and ascent or of the descent of a family or group to a particular ancestor. That's what genealogy is. Going back from parents to grandparents, mother, great-grandparents, and so on and so forth. That's the way we do it. In genealogy, the golden rule is to work backward. And that's what we intend to do today, try to teach you a little bit about how to find and pursue your roots. And basically, we do it through a number of sites that have come to be the last few years that have made it very easy to do so. When I started to do this a long time ago, there might have been maybe 30 of these sites that you have to go through and work through and put your name in and out of all these research boxes to find out what could be available. And secondly, we found research through the biggest genealogy companies in the world. That made it very, very easy for us to do this. We used to have to go off to family history centers run by the Mormon Church and sit there and look through microfilm, microfiche. Very, very difficult to do. Today you can do this sitting in your home on your laptop. These two sites, as well as a few others we'll talk about, are instrumental in getting to your roots. The two things we try to do in genealogy to pursue the roots to Europe is to find the immigrant ancestor and to find the town of origin where that immigrant ancestor came from in order to make the jump to whatever location it is in the world. So the first half of the presentation today will be basically a little bit about the American records that you're going to need to look at and understand, which will help you identify the two things I just talked to you about, the ancestor and the location. And I recommend that you, if you're going to do this, you need to go onto one or both of these sites. One is fee-based, Ancestry.com. Family Search is free. They have billions of records, billions. They have an astounding amount of records that, they send people all over the world to photograph these records. And they're listed, family, birth, marriage, and death records, and other civil records, right on their site. Antonati is one that we'll get to eventually when we make that jump across the pond to Italy. This is in Italian, but this is going to bring you to your deepest roots. And the others, Cognomi Italiani, this is just basically where you can find your name in Italy, your surname, kind of like uses a map to pinpoint you as to where your name may exist elsewhere in the country. Italian parish records, eventually we'll get to that as well. The first half is on the civil records. The second half will be a little bit on the Italian records and the church records, which are the deepest records, if you're very serious about going way back in time. One of the records that, again, start with the American records, is a very important record. It's the U.S. Census. The U.S. Census, if everyone has ever looked at this or seen this, is a wealth of information about our American record system. 1790 to 1950, you could get into one of those sites I just told you about, and you could research any of those 10 years, 1790 to 1950. It's done by name. Put a name in, or if you have a problem with a name, you can also do it by address and location of where you're trying to search. So in this case, I put in a name, Antonio Pirano, who shows up right down the bottom here. The 1920 census, an important year because loads and loads of Italians were coming from 1890 to 1920, 1925. This would be more or less the highlight of that time period where Italian Americans came. So, in fact, most of the names on this sheet are Italian-based. So what they tell you about Anthony is, and I don't expect you to see this back there. I know that there's a couple of overheads here, and I'm not sure it's going to be any closer. I'll tell you how old Anthony is. If he was married, how much money he has on hand, as he owns his property, is he renting the property, what he does for a living, how well educated he is. Most of them were illiterate, like Anthony. Tell you where he came from. If he wasn't born here, he was born in Italy. His parents were born in Italy, so on and so forth. What you don't see is the second page of this. But it'll outline who was living with him in that household at the time. So, and I know for a fact it was his wife and a bunch of kids, and it gives you their ages and what they may be doing. This is an important record for a lot of reasons. So a lot to obtain from this. Specifically, you could start with Anthony's age. If you know in 1920 that Anthony reports he's 40 years old, he's probably born in 1880. It says he comes from Italy. Okay, so start 1880, Italy, fine. Not from Austria, not from anywhere else from Italy. So we start to collect that information. We start to put down that information in places where we can come back and refer to a little later. I'm going to be showing you a number of slide like this, where all these different documents, they're not in any particular order. And some you'll get some wonderful information from. Others may just help you along and are not that important. This happens to be a grand slam. This is the declaration of intention. If, in fact, your ancestor did become a citizen, or at least intended to become a citizen, maybe the person died before citizenship came to be, and that's very possible. This is called the First Papers. And this is a document that I put up not only for, like I said, the importance of it, because when I tell you what's the contents is, you'll see immediately. But a lot of these records are historical in the sense that the family wants these kind of records for safekeeping. And you'll see as I go on to some of the others that there is a significant historical connection with it. The Declaration of Intention is basically someone who's letting the government know they intend to apply for citizenship at some time. First Papers is called. And this is a wonderful document because it answers some of the questions that I was talking about before about the two things we need. This individual, Ferdinando Ghivizzani, he's age 34 years old. He tells you that he's a tailor. Gives you a little bit of a description of him. Physical description tells you where he was born. Villanova, the province of Pisa. He's from northern Italy. Tells you he was born on this day, February 26, 1883. Wonderful. That's okay. We may just need to find that particular birth date at Pisa, and you'll have the start of your wonderful journey. Tells you where he lives in Philadelphia. He tells you that he came from Italy, and this is Victor Emmanuel. He tells you that he arrived in New York City on the first day of November 1901. Tremendous amount of information on this page. And this is the first paper. Now, 2 years pass, and he's able to move on to the petition of naturalization. This is where they're granting citizenship. Basically, it's the same information, except that he's renouncing his previous allegiance to the King of Italy. And he has some witnesses here as to test as to who he is. And there he becomes a citizen of the United States. 2 grand slams that gives you what you need. Location, where he was from, and we can move on. As I say, some of these records are more of interest to historical as well as to point you in the right direction. Obviously, these ancestors arrived in America from somewhere. Where did they land in the United States? Did they land in Ellis Island? Previous Ellis Island, you have the Garden, Castle Garden. Castle Garden was the precursor of Ellis Island, which operated from 1855 to 1892. So a lot of our earlier immigrants that came from Italy, just like I said earlier, starting around 1880, would have come through Castle Garden at first. So there's a search option on those pages that I showed you. You would just simply put in the name, tell me something about Antonio Perano, and this will come back. He was age 24 at the time. He arrived at Castle Garden in 1884. It's pretty early. It's relatively early. He left Palermo, and his last residence, important, Terranova, Sibari, place in Cosenza. This is the Castle Garden search, and this is what returns from that. A very, very old manifest. This is the manifest that relates to the time that he says he came in, and he is listed here. Not much of genealogical information here, but one of those documents that, as I said, has a historical connection to arriving in America. This may be your first immigrant ancestor that came to this country, so it kind of validates that. So it just, I'll have his name listed, tells you where he came from, tells you his age, and that's about it for the Castle Garden search. The next one we have is a much bigger one, Ellis Island, the one that replaced Castle Garden. You know, there's so much to say about Ellis Island. I could give a class on Ellis Island. It's an amazing story. Who came through, under what circumstances, the process, it's incredible. This is the manifest that responds to your question about another search for Antonio Perano. Much more information, as you can see. In fact, there's actually a second page to this, but not a lot more information to it. But another important document that gives you his name, how old he was when he arrived, tells you the date of arrival up top, where he came from, what he did for a living, was he single, was he married, how much money he had in his pocket. It's an interesting fact. When your people came here, how much money did they have in their pocket? Did they come over pretty well or pretty well heeled or not much well? You'd be surprised if people came over here with $5 and $10 in their pocket. It's amazing. His nationality, where he left, the country, the city that he left, the last residence, who he left there. You're able to see if he has a wife, if he has a son. Who did he leave behind in this country that he came from? Also, where he's going. What's his final destination? Is he coming to Philadelphia? Is he moving on somewhere to Chicago? What's his story? Where is he going and exactly who he's meeting? So once again, a lot of information on this form that you should be collecting and you should be analyzing as to forming up an opinion about who this man is and, of course, who he is in your family. Is he your grandfather? Is he your uncle? Is he your great-grandfather? How far back is this man of importance to you? Move on to the American birth records. This is actually an extract from the actual birth record because right now, Philadelphia and Pennsylvania are not really showing you the exact record. You'd have to go down to the Philadelphia archives or write the state, but it's an extract of the information that they have online. So if in fact you're interested in your grandmother, maybe your grandfather's not here anymore, or your great-grandfather to look into the origins. So you say, okay, let's look at Grandma Vincenza Scafidi. Let's see what we know about her. I don't know anything about her. Well, she was born actually in Philadelphia. She was born in Philadelphia in April 5th of 1913, Philadelphia. Her father's name is Gaspar Scafidi. He's 36 years old. Oh, that's great. He's 36 years old in 1913. I gotta make a note of that. I gotta subtract that and see when this man might be born. Okay? And his wife's name, that is Vincenza's mother's name, is Giuseppe Siciliano. Okay? The American birth records are not of great importance, but again, it's one of those documents that kind of just supports others. So, and I think you maybe want to have your grandmother's birth certificate. I'm skipping over the marriage certificate because it's really not that important. It doesn't have a lot of information. This is an American death certificate. And once again, not of tremendous importance, but of historical maybe importance. And this is what you will get in return for looking for the death record of a particular person. In this case, we're looking for Mr. Frank the Prince. He lived in South Philadelphia. He was married at the time of his demise. He was only 28 years old. It tells you what the thing that killed him, what his demise was. He was born in Philadelphia. His father's name was Vincent the Prince. His mother's name was Jenny Pirano. Where they lived, where he's buried, so forth. You can make some importance of this regard, for instance, even to know where he was born, where he was buried, but you know that maybe there's more family members buried at Holy Cross. And as I say, I wanted to show it to you because it is an American record, and it does relate to your search, but of not highly significance to bring you into the deepest searches. So you'll be getting all this information that we're talking about, and you will be filling in these little boxes. If you open up an account at Family Search or at Ancestry, they're going to try to create a tree for you when you're learning this information. You put that in, they fill in these little boxes for you. There's a number of different configurations. They'll put that in for you, and you'll see that tree start to come alive, and you'll start to understand who they are. You see the flow, and maybe what else you might need to do in terms of your next research. So at this point, we've done a lot in America. We probably found the immigrant ancestor. We probably found his origin, his town of origin. I think we're going to make a jump, take a look, and see what Italy might have for us. All right, there it is. So here we go. So here's the peninsula that wasn't called Italy until 1860, 1861. History tells us that most of our ancestors came through places like Ellis Island and New Orleans and Boston and so on and so forth, came from the south. I showed you one a few minutes ago, Mr. Kimizzani, came from Pisa. Pisa's up here. Now, Pisa wasn't even part of the southern part of Italy, another kingdom totally. This was the kingdom of Naples and the kingdom of Two Sicilies. A whole bunch of regions that had literally nothing to do with the rest of the country. We had the Pope here in Lazio. There was the Papal States too, another power that took over certain groups here, certain regions. And you had a whole bunch of principalities and run by counts and dukes and others, all up here. There were independent city-states that had literally nothing to do with everything else until unification in 1860. Southern Italy, as I say, most of the ancestors did come through here. Sicily, Calabria, Puglia, Abruzzo, Campania. This is probably where you're going to be doing your research. Today, there's 20 regions, and the regions are equivalent to our states. 110 provinces, equal to our counties, and 7,900 individual towns throughout the entire state, the entire peninsula. Of course, can't forget Sardinia and Sicily, which actually is the largest region in the entire country. So we have to kind of home in on where we're going to go next. Well, this picture of the old books. I love this picture. My friend Len, who was a previous presenter here, Len Garcio, provided this. I remember this kind of look when I went to Italy and researched in the libraries, the archives, and the churches, and this is what I've seen. So, oh, what do I do? Where do I start? Okay, well, you got to start somewhere. So you go to one of those people he identified, and you think you know his birth record, his birth date, and you think you know what line he came from. And the records they go back in individual towns. It's 400 or 500 years old. Certain ones don't have that many. Certain ones have been older. But the books are where they are. All these records are kept. They're kept in the 7,900 towns that I'm talking about, and in the provinces that I mentioned as well. There's copies in the provinces. And they maintain these records. When you open some of these books, and you'll see them when you go online to look for a particular year of birth, for your birth records, you see this. You see these indexes. So you would look at the name you want, comes over, and it'll tell you exactly what page you need to go through. Okay, let's go back a little bit to the sites I just talked about. And the sites will come up. Just on the layers. So in this case, this is a record from the province of Chieti in the region of Abruzzo. So I'm looking for this ancestor, and he is in Abruzzo. Fine. Scroll through the records that Ancestry and/or Antonati and/or Family Search have. So you're looking for a particular, for Chieti, let's just say. You put in Chieti, it'll open up to a whole bunch of years, and those particular years, starting in 1809 through 1900, it'll have the birth, marriage, and death records. So, logically, you'll look at what you have. Okay, I want to see the birth record from 1880. And I know I'm going to look for this individual. And this is the typical birth record that will come up. Some are more complicated, some are less complicated. This one is very easy to read because the script isn't that bad. You can see that they're pre-printed where you kind of just fill in the blanks. And what's good about that is if you can't read Italian, you will by the time you see 10 or 11 or 12 of these things. You'll get the feel as to what belongs to where. And they're kind of like all the same in the sense that they begin the same and they kind of end the same. In this particular case, this birth record starts out at the top that it was written in 1846, the 6th day of October. This is the mayor's name. He's the official of the town. He's explaining what's going to happen with this birth record. He's telling you the town is Buccianico, and before him comes an individual named Casadorio. Happens to be the last name, same as mine. Is that something? And he's 33 years old, and he's a contadino. Contadino. He's a farmer, or is unskilled labor. And just for a moment, I just want to kind of detract from that, because the contadino, the professions are really an interesting thing in terms of the aspect of the culture. The contadino is really kind of like a class, it's like a class of citizens. Because you have classes of citizens that almost never change. This contadino, his father was probably a contadino, his grandfather's probably this newborn baby that he's bringing is going to probably be a contadino. It's hard to break out of those levels of how you're born into. If he was in fact a sartor, a tailor, or a calzolaio, a shoemaker, he probably came from the same kind of person with that same kind of job. So it's very difficult to maneuver up. Anyway, so you'll see this often. So Casadorio is coming to the mayor here, and he's bringing a baby with him, a male baby. And he's saying, my wife, Carmela Canosa, just had this baby. Carmela, my legitimate wife, she's 23 years old. This kind of scribbled out in here, but she says, and now we are naming him Aldimario. So his name is Aldimario, he was born here. She declares that she was born here, it's all true. They're actually giving a little address as to where they actually live in the town where the baby was born. This is the civil side of the record. On this side, incredibly, is the church part of it. And there, the church portion of this is the baptism of this baby. Literally on the same day, October 6th of the same year, in the parish of St. Michael Arcangelo, the baby was baptized by this priest and of the name of Mario. And that kind of confirms his baptism. Same day baptism. They were so worried about these babies not living long enough to be baptized that they rushed them in there the same day, 1 or 2 days later. Because if you look through as many of these things as I have, thousands and thousands, you cannot believe the early death of the babies in the 18th and 19th century. It's amazing how many children were lost within the first few days or the first few months, or certainly within the first year. So they rushed to get the baby baptized. Matrimony record, you're going to see these. Another wealth of information because it gives a little broader information about both sides of the marriage. In this case, Nicola Francica is marrying Filomena Napoli. Okay, this record is from 88, April of 1888, and this was occurring in Brianico, which is in Calabria, on the Mediterranean side. So essentially, what this does is it kind of like opens up a little more about the other side. If you're researching Nicola, there's Nicola. He was born in Brianico. He's 26 years old. He is a ferraio. Man works with metal, with iron. He is the son of Paolo. Great. He's giving you his father's name. You've just gone back another generation. If you were interested in Nicola, now you know his father's name. Nicola. Nicola is alive because otherwise there would be a little word there, fu, which would mean that he was demised. He was gone already, but he's not. So he's alive, Paolo. And he resides in the town. And of Teresa Strano. Once again, there's no fu there, there's a D. He's of her. So she's alive too. Good news. And she gives the age. Sorry, I'm skipping the line. It's Strano. Okay, she's resident in Brianico as well. Filomena Napoli. She's 17 years old. Marrying Nicola, just a few years younger. She's a filatrice. She's a spinner. She works with the spinning machines. Born in Brianico, and they also give her parents' names. Same thing. His name, the father's name, the mother's name, Cassandra. It's a great record. It gives you the other side of the equation as to who they're marrying and some information with the dates of how old they are. So typical, matrimonial record. It's atypical because some of these things do at different times contain all kinds of information that's very interesting, way beyond just the classic information here, which is kind of straightforward. This is what it is. Sometimes there's additional information about troubles in the family, why there was this or that thing going on, or maybe it's a second marriage, and they give a lot of information about the second marriage, meaning the wife is deceased, not that there's a divorce that wasn't happening. But some just additional information that kind of like fleshes out what's going on in that marriage. Sometimes, and I've seen this a lot of times, where children were born of an unwed mother, and this marriage will now legitimatize them. And it'll literally say somewhere in here that, oh yeah, Nicola had 2 kids with Philomena. Here's the dates of birth, but now they're legitimate because they're getting married. And you realize that Nicola just lost his legitimate wife, so he's moving on to marrying this one. That's the marriage record. And then we have the death record, kind of a straightforward record. Nothing particularly important about this or difficult to read. I actually just did the little English translation from it, but essentially what it basically says, this is from another part of Italy. This is from Castelforte, and this is a little bit further back, 1812. A little older record, 1812. But almost always in the same format. Thanks to Napoleon. Napoleon came into Italy in 1809, a little early in 1805, and he kind of created the law of having all of these birth, marriage, and death records in one kind of format. And he was kind of pulling it together because there really wasn't any. Just the church at that time was writing in the birth, marriage, and death records of the children that was a civil record, at least, who was being baptized, married, and deceased, who was getting their last action. So, but anyway, so this is kind of a product of what Napoleon put into place and continued for another 90 years. In fact, I'll just read you real quick. That's what it says. It says 1812, the month of August, before the mayor, the civil office of Castelforte, in the province of Terra di Lavoro. That's actually Latina today. Appearing Gaetano di Principe, he was 47 years old at the time, professor. He was a laborer, lived in the city, and Francesco Vellucci, age 60, of profession laborer, living in Castelforte. They declared him on the 24th. The hour, sorry, this is the death record, yeah. Died Pasquale di Principe, son of the deceased Gaetano. So you have a couple of 2 or 3 different generations here. So it's getting more interesting with what they're putting in there, making it a little easier for you to start tracking who is who. Age 60 of the profession, he was a city employee, lived in Castelforte. Okay. We're going to kind of lead, so I mean, we're kind of clear now with what you kind of have to do to find, that immigrant and his town of origin. The American records teach you that. You do it. You use those 2 sites that I've talked about to make it so easy for you to get there. And when you open up those sites like I was talking about, whether it's a family search or otherwise, the records are there. It's just a matter of opening up the record, the year of the record, and then it's broken down by birth, marriage, and death. You open those up and you scroll through until you find what you need. It's not very, I mean, it can be easy, it can be difficult, it can be sometimes impossible. If the documents aren't in existence, you're not going to find them. I've run into numerous problems over the years with records either being obscured for one reason or another, bleed through of the ink, or something torn, or they're not there at all. I've heard back from churches. Yes, there was a fire, there was a flood, there was all these terrible things that happened. The records aren't there, or they're incomplete, that kind of thing. So it's a learning experience. It's not something that's very, very easy to do, but I say you can do it because as you go along, you teach yourself basically what you can do. These two sites I keep talking about, which are tremendous, they're tutorials on there. They literally teach you how to read those records. They break it down and they give you all kinds of word translations for the kinds of things we're talking about, say like for the profession or the years or the numbers. And they make it easy to get to where I think you want to go to. You can easily find your roots in Sicily or in the mainland of Italy easily to 1700. It's not that difficult. If you want to go further, we're talking about getting involved with documents like this. This is a church record. This is a church record. Let's see, 1693, as you can see at the top of the page, and it's in Latin, which is another curveball to you. If you already mastered Italian, now you can start into Latin now. And once again, like I said, there are tutorials to help you do this. But this is a typical page in the birth book at the church. You can access this kind of thing as well. One of the sites that I brought up that I told you could do everything in the world on is a church, literally a church site. And they have been ItalianParishRecords.org. It's phenomenal. It happened a few years ago. There are people putting all kinds of church records on there. There's people going all around the world, and they're asking the parishes, can we please photograph everything in your church archive? And they're doing that, and putting it online, they're making it available for most of the time for free. So you can see something like this, and again, it's a little bit of a learning. This is in fact, I think, another easy one to read because some of the priests that are writing this, they didn't really care too much about being so clear about what they were doing. Sometimes, this is even a little more information you actually see. Sometimes you actually see just the name, it's the birth date, the father's name. They don't even mention the mother sometimes. But in this case, let's see. So 1693, the month is April, and the day is the 16th day, and this is the baptism of an infant that was the product of the father, Domenico Antonio, and the mother, Susanna Tatasciore, and they are naming the baby Giacomo Antonio. And it's a wonderful document to have if it is, in fact, your seventh great-grandfather or eighth great-grandfather back in 1793. This is possible to achieve. One more, a document from 1556. And this stuff isn't the oldest either. I mean, those archives are just absolutely amazing there. They have things from the 9th and 10th century on. Much more difficult to read. Something like I just said, a father, the name of the baby, the date, that's it. Take it or leave it. You don't really need to know the mother's name. For some reason, I don't know why. But, so this takes a little more work. I just wanted to show it to you. It's kind of like an example of this too, that it does get difficult. I have records for 20 years that I've copied in Latin 20 years ago in churches, and I still can't read them today. And I sent them to specialists in Italy who still couldn't read them. It's just one of those things that you just can't decipher them. There's a whole group of records. Considering how deep you really want to go, we covered the American birth records. We covered I'll call them, the present birth, marriage, and death records in Italy. Let's go back to 1809. And then there are other civil records that are censuses and other kinds of records that are in the provinces that really go deep. Notaries are the lawyers in the towns. And the notaries were responsible for writing almost anything that a townsperson would want to be filed. Notaries sat down with the citizens and put together a will, a dowry, a a sale of a property, a sale of an animal, you know, who owes who money. It's a legal filing that was written up and filed in the provinces, and you could read those today. And I was able to do that for myself and for clients. And talking about fleshing out the cultural and the family picture for you, it's way better than just the birth, marriage, and death records. Now they're talking really about who owns what, who owes what, who's buying whatever they're buying, who's going to jail. Everything you could possibly think of are in those notary records, and they're deep and they're rich, and I've seen them available from the 1400s. So you can also access those. They are in the provinces. So when you're finished all those little blocks and you put all that little information in there, you know, you're coming up with a tree. This is not the best manifestation of a tree. It's not what it looks like when you go into Ancestry or you go into Family Search. But you get the idea. Just a generational breakdown as to maybe your oldest ancestor and who your youngest family member is. And it's not that difficult to do. I encourage people to do it. I mean, it's one of the best things I think you could do for yourself and your family to know this, because it's not about some abstract subject. It's about you. It's about you and your family, and it's about who you're from. And if you see some of the things that they had to endure to come, the whole Ellis Island trip, or worse, which is, like I said, it's a class of another time. The difficulties of doing that, of getting citizenship, and there are other records available that we can't cover them all here today. This is a little more than kind of like an oversee for this class. It's I usually have to do this for 2 hours or more, because I go deeply into the records. You know, we talk about strategies to how to find them. You talk about roadblocks. When you come into roadblocks, what do I do to fix that? You can hire guys like me, and I'll tell you how to do that. I know how to do that. But anyway, thank you. Is there any questions, anything I can answer here today? Yes.
The first documents that you put up, they were available, the American documents are available through Ancestry and
They're
through...
available through Ancestry and through Family Search,
Okay.
and through some others. I mean, there are a lot of sites. I find those two that I talked about, they are fabulous, because they have everything. When you put in a name, you search a name, all of these documents come up of all different sorts. So you can kind of like go into that. Yes, that's connected to who I'm asking. Or no, the name is close. It's the wrong birthday, but so on and so forth. Whether it's a military record, whether it's one of the census records, whether it's a Social Security record, which is a fabulous record, talking about the particular vital statistics of the person. They're all there. They're all there for you. You can print them, you can download them and put them into your system, and you can use them. But all of those American records are there. Like I say, I think exhausting the American records will definitely bring you to your immigrant and his location, the town location. Anybody else? Anything else? Yes, sir.
What are your experiences been on site? I'm sure you've gone to visit some of these towns, city halls, churches. Are they receptive? Are they difficult, I assume? Or?
Well, that's it. It's interesting because, yeah, I mean, I spent time in the Italian churches. I spent time in the archives, in the city halls. And some were too glad to have you. You know, they're like, wow, you came from America to do this? And yeah, we did. And they'll open up the archive for you and help you. Some of when you get into the parishes, the priests are a little bit confused as to why you're there. It's like, why do you want to be here? Well, I'm looking up this record. You know, my father was from this town. What do you want to know? And they would say things like, only the Americans. He's from the Americans. Why do you people want to know? I understand. Talking to cousins there, they said, well, yeah, we live right down the street. And if I really want to know something, I can just walk right down the street and ask to see the book. But I got to tell you that I've had some fabulous receptions from many of the priests who literally, I felt like I worked there. They gave me the key. They said, come every day. When you're done, leave the key. And they were very successful searches. So I did have, it's a little of each. It's the city hall. I remember the first time I went to the city hall in this town a long time ago, and I came with the records and I wanted to further them, and I was talking to the clerk and he said, no, I'm sorry, we're closed. We're closed for today. And I'm like, well, I'm thinking it's, it's another hour or so here. No. Well, who are you? What do you want? As well, okay, I came here and I'm the cousin of so-and-so. Oh, your cousin, why didn't you say you were the cousin of so-and-so? Come on back around here. It's my new opening line. Cousin of so-and-so. Give me what I want. No, the reception is interesting. It changes when you have to write, and a lot of these times you don't have access to some of these records. I had to write the old way, the hard way, writing a letter to a priest, writing a letter to a mayor, putting money into an envelope, lira at that time, before the euro, putting money into a police, looking for the death record of blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you got an answer, sometimes you didn't. And, or sometimes you waited a year for a little response. Today, you don't have to go through that. I mean, all of these archives are online. Just sit down, write them an email, and they'll do everything for you. They'll tell you if they have the record. They'll tell you how much they want. They'll have it set aside for you. When they receive your funds, you get the record. New world, different world. As I said, I remember the old days, starting out doing this. Very, very difficult. Of course, I didn't even know it was difficult at the time. It was just, but now I see how easy it is. So everybody should be doing this. Anyway, any other questions? No. Oh.
I have one. I don't think I asked you this before, but what's the most interesting case you've ever worked on, and the one that took you farthest back in time?
Well, the one that took me furthest back in time is my own, which we're struggling with the 1380s here, having a very difficult time. That's 25 years of research on my own line. The most interesting was way beyond my own, which was a client that I had last year. And I may have told you a little bit about it. Of course, I never talk about the names of who they are, but I had what I thought was the best. I thought it was a movie, at least a book. It involved a family. I'll just say one thing. The family was from Sicily.
Say no more.
I know where this is going.
It was from Sicily, and it involved well, I gotta watch what I'm saying. It involved the two boys that were born of an illegitimate, very, very young woman, and there was no acknowledgement to the motherhood of this woman, because she was married to another guy who was, in fact, a very powerful man in the town. And these two boys grew up and lived apart. They didn't even know they were brothers. They were about 2 or 3 years old, 2 or 3 years difference in age. And they lived apart. And the father of these two boys was was a very rich guy. He owned a lot of property in the town. They addressed him before his first name as Don. Okay. And he eventually paid 2 of his workers to adopt these 2 boys. And they said they never knew they were brothers until much later on. They resemble each other, and they kind of figured it out. They came together and recognized who their mothers was. Anyway, there was the family literally got rid of the 2 boys. They put them on ships. One went to New York, the other one went to Chicago, and they were looked after by people here in the United States for a long time. And when they went back to Sicily many, many years later, they found that they had all of these doors shut in their face, but they couldn't get any information as to who their people were, that kind of thing. It goes on and on and on. It's like a saga that's unbelievable. It actually happened. It started in 1885 or something like that. And I think the last of them just died a few years ago. So I was kind of asked to kind of validate all of it was there, all the records and whatnot, and see what I could do about the actual history of what was going on in this place in Sicily. And I mean, it's a book. It's a book. It's just so interesting that this could go on because, again, the powerful family, the way they kind of covered up who the mother was. And to have these two men adopt these two kids, have them not believe that they were brothers. They figured it out themselves. They had eventually gotten somewhere with identifying that they were brothers. And they confronted the father, who denied it, and did everything he could to kind of, because. So today, I just met with the client that I'm telling you about. I just met with him last week, and I asked him how it was going. And a book is being prepared with the idea of a movie. And he told me that they had hired private investigators in Sicily to try to unravel some of it, and they hired these high-priced guys, lawyers and everything, doors shut in their face constantly. Nobody wants to talk about it. I contacted someone here who came from this town, a distant relative, and I contacted this person a year ago to try to find out what I could. Absolutely, I do not want to talk to you or about this subject. So that's the end of that. That's my most interesting case. No, it was interesting. It was a little more interesting about it was that this family that I'm telling you about, this very powerful family, they were involved with accepting Garibaldi when he came to Sicily in 1860. And they did all that they could to facilitate his arrival with his 1,000 men. There was a Masonic lodge involved in this. It's all kind of intrigue. And it's in the history books, it's all true. So I thought it was a tremendous beginning of Garibaldi, the unification of Italy, yet this other thing was going on. So they hosted Garibaldi, they had him set up, and they gave them arms and ammunition, and he did what he did. He was in Sicily for quite some time, and they hosted him very well. So that aspect of it, the historical. It's a tremendous story. Any other questions? Everybody's ready to do their roots? Okay, thank you very much.